is murder causing
Prince
chaos.
Jaehaerys. Blah, blah, blah. You know what Prince Jaehaerys did?
Dude, looked so fucking creepy.
It did. So,
But
let's talk about it.
let's talk.
So we are...
After the riveting conversation we just had.
Which was not...
Supporting the German economy.
Which was not on the record.
But supporting the German economy post-World War II. Far post-World War II.
Jesus Christ.
I don't want people to get wrong ideas, my man.
Wrong ideas indeed.
How are you, my friend?
I am doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I have been busy. I went to a live WWE show and I had oodles of fun.
I saw on the socials.
It was very fun, dude.
Yeah. Did you give him the chair?
I did not give him the chair. I was a good, responsible audience member.
Very good.
Very good.
I had some delicious pie last night. It was so fucking
good.
Dude,
pie is good.
Pie is very good.
I am a pie person. Like, if you give me choice of pie and cake, I will choose pie.
The thing with pie is you got a variance of textures.
Yes.
And even using kind of shit-ass ingredients can make a very respectable pie.
For sure.
Yep.
1,000%.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. So you know what else came out this weekend, though?
A hot B, a hot E.
No.
A hot D.
A hot D came out this weekend. We got episode 2 of season 2 of House of the Dragon.
Boop 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 boop.
Indeed. It's funny. So like, I'm not sure if it's just me, but like when I go to HBO Max, it does not tell me the name of the episode. And I think that was also a thing in Game of Thrones, right? You never got the name of the episode until like after the premiere.
Correct. I noticed the name of the episode in the
recap.
Not even the recap. I noticed it on the like little subtitle thing. But it was kind of halfway in, and it was when the episode is called. It's called Rhaenyra the Cruel, isn't it? And I saw it actually immediately as people were saying, "This is the work of Rhaenyra the Cruel," which we'll get to what it is in a moment. I was like, "Oh, the name of the episode."
Yeah. So no real reason to like, pussyfoot around.
Nope.
The episode because last time we had a recap of season 1 and all that stuff. So let's just get into episode 2. We kick off with like immediate aftermath.
Rage.
Yeah. So like we got Prince Jaehaerys getting got.
He got.
And so like episode 2 starts right away with like they are cleaning up.
And it was fun to see King Aegon mad.
Yeah.
I will say this actor, what's his name?
Tom Glenn
Carney does a good job of being an angry boy.
An angry boy indeed.
Yeah.
And I mean
rightfully angry, right?
So like it's kind of interesting to see him like last episode to this episode because like last episode he was like kind of like I don't want to call him like a himbo. But like he was very like naive in his like wanting to rule and be like liked, and then this episode he's like I don't give a fuck.
He had his fuckboy posse
for sure.
Yeah, you know what, he is becoming to me more likable, and it's not necessarily purely noble traits that he's having, but I found myself, even despite what may have been like his lack of rationality in this episode, I found myself on his side a lot of the time in the conflicts that he was having.
So one thing that I was thinking about, like when people talk about Aegon, they're like, "Oh, he's inexperienced. He shouldn't be king," and I'm like, "Well, of course, because nobody actually took the time to like prep him."
And in terms of the Westeros that we've seen a disproportionate amount of like inexperienced kings.
For sure.
King. And yes, correct. Nobody took the time to prep him. Absolutely.
But and that's like I don't want to say it's Rhaenyra's fault. It's not. It's Viserys' fault because he was prepping Rhaenyra more or less to be queen.
Yeah.
And then they just thrust this on him.
But you got to have your contingency.
For sure. But this is all entirely, like, not on him. Like, this is on Otto. This is on Alicent.
Right.
This is on Viserys.
And it's on Daemon, obviously.
On Daemon, for sure. But I think overall, like...
His lack of preparedness.
His lack of preparedness is not on him at all. It's... He's another, like, quote-unquote victim.
Right.
That just happens to be in, like, the wrong place. wrong time kind of thing.
And I think I was listening to our last week's episode. I think one thing that I didn't do justice enough when we were talking about Aegon was like he has done big piece of shit things.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he raped a maid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't want to glorify him too much, but so the episode starts out with the aftermath of the murder of his son. You go to a council meeting, and then there's like investigation going on. People are trying to be cautious. But Aegon's like, we know who did this. He was like, it was that bitch queen, the cunt of Dragonstone. And I'm like, hey, great names.
Great names.
Even though I am on Team Rhaenyra, great names. But B, he's like, let's go do something about it. Which isn't, I mean, it's not the most prudent thing. It's not the wisest thing. But
you also know, like, we also know it isn't Rhaenyra.
No.
Right? So, like, there's that bit of a disconnect where, like, I understand his anger and I understand, like, where he's coming from.
Yeah.
But if he goes after Rhaenyra, he is not going after the person responsible.
He is not.
Right? So, so like, it's a bit disproportionate, too.
It is, but it's interesting. Last week, I feel like our theme of the show, we talked about our theme of the show is going to kind of be like, yes, but that's no excuse, right? So I agree it's not Rhaenyra, but at the same point, there's going to come a point in time where, like, Rhaenyra and Aegon, or who's ever in charge of Team Green and who's ever in charge of Team Black, are just going to have to be responsible for, like, they're going to have to be responsible for the actions of their underlings, right? So even though Daemon went rogue, like, at some point, like, you're the monarch, like...
Keep your man in check.
Keep your man in check.
Which, I like that this episode, like, skipping a little bit ahead, this episode kind of proves that Rhaenyra cannot keep her man in check.
Yeah. They had a fight.
They had a big fight. We'll get to that. Yeah. Crazy, though. Like, I understand Otto wanting to use, like, this tragedy and be like, all right, well, you know, lemonade out of lemons, I guess.
Right.
But to be like, all right, let's parade this dead baby. And Grant, okay, we keep saying he's a baby. He's like 5.
Yeah.
But still.
Well, you know, but still, you're right. I'm learning this from wedding planning. A 1 or 2-year-old, right? They don't have to eat dinner. But a 5-year-old, you got to pay for the 5-year-old.
Oh, absolutely.
You can get away with not paying. You can maybe get away with not paying for the 3-year-old.
Maybe.
But you got to pay for the 5-year-old.
Absolutely.
So you're right. His plan to, you know, parade dead little Jaehaerys, which that prop of, like, the child with the head
with the head just, like, wobbling,
that gave me so much willies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It looked so silly to me.
It looked silly, but it reminded me of one of my cousins had gone to a funeral for his boss. And it was his boss's, like, granddaughter.
Jesus.
He said it was, like, the saddest thing you'd ever seen.
I can imagine.
Like, the coffin was tiny. Mm-hmm. He's like, that should not. He's like, you go to this thing, and you're like, things should not be this way.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw with dead little Jaehaerys.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that they're taking a kid who was already an innocent.
Yep.
And he was an innocent casualty at that.
Yeah.
And now you're using him as a prop for your cause.
Yeah.
Like, it's just layers upon layers of being an asshole.
And I think that's why, even though technically Aegon is wrong, I feel like I have more sympathy for him than I should. Because, like, well, you're not being counseled with wisdom. Like, maybe you're being counseled with some strategy or, like, craftiness. But, like, the people who are telling you to be prudent are also asking you to do, like, a shitty thing. So part of me is like, yeah, do the more direct thing and just, like, retaliate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, again, as the audience, we know it's not her.
Correct.
So, like, retaliation does feel like it's still not
justified.
Not the right cause.
Right.
But I get it.
But we're in it.
Yeah. Again, just because we understand.
Right.
There you go.
No excuse.
There's that scene, though, when they're parading. Oh, by the way, before we get to that, it's kind of crazy to me just how, like, not only are they parading the dead kid around, they're also then forcing Helena in it. Like, Alicent.
Yeah. Alicent's more
Alicent
willing.
is a little bit more, you know, I don't want to say she's, like, distant away from like the kid because it is her grandkid.
Right.
But like Elena, like just watch this kid get got in front of her.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, when Allison's like, "Oh, Elena, but what you saw," she's like, "Dude, lady,
Yeah,
I don't
not
give
the time.
I don't give a fuck what you were doing.
Not the time.
Not the time." But like forcing Helena to be like, "This is your duty. Like your duty is to the kingdom,
Right.
to the cause."
Which,
like
I can't not see Helena as a child. Like,
dude, she is totally a kid, right?
Yeah.
I think in the books,
they
say
they're
she's
all
20.
Oh, that
20
old.
or 21.
Because in the books, they're all, like, younger than...
Oh, yeah.
Even, like, the Game of Thrones books.
Yeah. No, I think, like John is, like, 14, right?
Right. Which, also, I mean, I get that's their technical age, but I also feel like people who write books or animation will, like, say 14, but then you read the words and you look at the actions and you're like, this is not a 14-year-old.
This middle schooler is doing some...
I know times were different back then, but, like, for all the skibbity toilet that I've seen...
Skibbity toilet.
A 14-year-old is not chasing down White Walkers in the snow. Anyway.
For sure.
Aside.
We then, after this, we go on to, like... So they do finally kind of get some information, right? We have the guy from...
We got Blood.
Yes. Blood. He's the gold coat.
He's found by Lyris Strong.
And immediately he folds.
Yeah.
No, like, loyalty whatsoever.
I mean, why? I mean, he is not, that is not the personality of someone who is loyal, someone who would do that. But then incentives, like, unless you're smart enough to, like, bargain for your life, which clearly
very dumb. He did not.
And this is not the age of the Eighth Amendment and innocence until proven guilty.
Which the funny thing is, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, like, there is a lot of like notion in the series about how loyal the Gold Cloaks are to Daemon. So, like, even though right now they are, they're caring for,
the city
and everything. Like, they are loyal. Yeah. Like, they do mention, like, they are loyal to this guy.
Yeah.
Keep him at arm's length, basically.
Yeah.
And the fact that, like, immediately he just, like, gives him away. He's like, no, it was even. He gave me half the money now, half later.
Yeah.
And Aegon just immediately fucking kills him.
Yep.
Which is stupid, because he could have been like, all right, we'll keep you here. We're going to round up all the rat catchers. Tell us which one did it.
Right.
And he could have, for sure, been more precise, but it's his anger. Again, I get it. Not an excuse.
I think this is going to cause us to jump a little bit ahead in the episode, but it's a thread that's related. I think maybe one of my complaints, and it'll be clear to me when we see the consequences, using medieval moral codes.
Yeah?
I don't think killing all the rat catchers was like the worst thing in the world.
I think it sets an example.
I think that's an example.
I think it's the whole thing of, like, someone betrays you, you round up all the people in your crew, and you say, all right, I'm going to start new. This is what happens if you betray me.
And, like, Otto's making the point, and this is what causes the rift between Otto and Aegon, and then Otto gets sent packing for the second time. But he was like, oh, now, like, we just got goodwill from the parade, and now the people are going to hate you for killing all the rat catchers. And I'm like, are they though? Like, I don't know. I feel... Of the atrocities that have been committed so far, like the dragon popping up, like through which he did say, like, the people thought was like a bad omen against the Greens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like 20 dead rat catchers is not a...
In the grand scale of war crimes, the war crime's not as much of a war crime.
Yeah, once again, I'm not saying it's right.
For sure.
But I don't know. I don't think that's like... Otto makes it seem like it's this terrible strategic blunder.
Well, I would say it kind of is. So I
would say it's a strategic blunder, but not a terrible strategic blunder.
So the way I see it is, like, this awful thing happened with the kid, and then, okay, fine, it happened. It shows weakness,
right?
Because someone can infiltrate you so easily. Well, how do we get goodwill? Well, let's parade the dead body and blame Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
So that gives you goodwill. But
Right.
then immediately the goodwill that you got, you lose by just having, like, everything, like, all of these people, like, these innocent people dead.
Yes, but I feel like it's still a small amount of innocence compared to the grand spectacle that was that parade.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my greater point, because like we'll see where the show, like, how many consequences to those types of actions the show gives to Aegon, but I do think it goes back to our previous point that, like, you know, this counseling that's like Aegon's receiving is coming too little too late.
Oh, for sure.
From people who themselves do not have good motivations. Right. So I still read that blunder as, like, not as bad as Otto makes it out to be. And once again, I still think Otto bears responsibility for the fallout.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think he kind of almost admits when, like, he gets fired and he's like, yeah, your dad was right. Like,
Yeah.
maybe we should have had just Rhaenyra do this shit.
That was a great scene when Otto's mad at him, and then Aegon's like, my dad made me the king. And he's like, you think that?
Which is so funny. Like,
Yeah.
it I was like, yeah. And that's kind of like the backbone of, like, this entire, like, political landscape.
Right.
That, like, everything is just like somebody else is pulling the strings in the background, right?
And it is interesting how brash these characters are in comparison to Aegon. Like, in that opening council scene, Aegon's ready to storm out. And then Kristen Cole straight up, like, blocks the door and, like, gives him the hand.
Mm-hmm.
And in this other scene, like, Otto gets fired after, like, you know, basically insulting him. And not that he gets away totally.
Insolent pup.
And not that he's getting totally consequence free, because obviously he got fired. But within medieval, like,
the fact that
world,
Aegon
though,
didn't
like,
just have him killed.
the fact that they didn't have both of them killed there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, if my Kingsguard, like, stopped me from trying to go out the door of the council, I'd be like, boy.
But I think that's also it does show that in the grand scheme of things, Aegon is more mentally stable than, like, a Joffrey.
Correct.
Joffrey would have 1,000%.
Yeah, off the
just
wall.
off
Right.
off of their head right now.
Right.
Or you commit Sudoku right now.
Exactly.
Right? So, like,
Which we saw some Sudoku in this episode.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think, like, that all just kind of goes to show, like, he really just wants to be liked.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
Yeah.
Like, fear works, but, like, what he wants is that admiration.
Imagine being so obsessed with your line that you spend all this energy propping up somebody who you, not only you dislike, but, like, Allison dislikes him, Otto dislikes him. Like, all this energy for someone you don't even like.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
So that leads us to our new development. Who gets more power? Sir
Kristen Cole, yeah.
Who, man, this show is doing a lot of heavy lifting to make some of, like, awful people come across as, like, well, if you really think about, like, how they really feel.
Not with Kristen.
Kristen's
dude. Pure piece of
they're
shit.
Just like, we need a character like this, though. We need a character that the whole internet can just rally behind.
To be like, fuck you, Kristen.
And be like, this dude fucking sucks.
I love the Cargill twins. And by love, I mean loved, because they are dead now. But
yeah.
Yeah.
That scene, though, when he, like, walks up to him, he's like, your cloak is dirty.
Yeah.
I'm like, bitch. The boss.
I'd be like, bitch, we haven't invented sewer systems yet.
He's like, oh, well, the cloak was dirty from parading the dead child around the city.
Yeah, let me eat my breakfast.
Let me eat my breakfast. Which leads to then Cole coming up with this
plan.
Wonderful scheme. This will not ever fail.
Yeah.
Of, like, all right, we're gonna send these twins.
You know how, like, middle schoolers think of, like, let's switch classes for today with our twin brother, and we'll see if the teacher notices. That's exactly.
this.
Which there was a group of twins. There was a pair of twins that I taught this year that if they had switched classes,
You'd be fucked.
I would have not. Yeah, I would have not noticed.
Should have them do it just for fun. See what's up.
I definitely think they should.
I don't think I've ever seen a pair of twins that identical that I would not recognize. Because there's always something. This a couple years ago, we had two kids.
Yeah.
I just knew them as the Nelson brothers. I can't remember their names. They were not in my class, but like I would see them and just their stance.
You could tell
was very different.
Yeah.
Like the way one would laugh was very different than the other, and like that's for me just like seeing them in the hallway.
Yeah.
But like if I had them as a kid in class, I think I might be able to like.
Oh no!
Pick them out.
Not these two. One of them, I guess, had a freckle above the eyebrow.
That's a freckle.
That was the tell. But like it wasn't a really big freckle. Like you would have to like look at the freckle. But they both had the same interests. They both had like similar mannerisms, same personality, same hair, same outfits.
Which is what these two guys have.
Yeah.
Because like, it's kind of crazy for me. I was looking at this and I was like, are they two people played by the same actor?
Right.
And then at the end, when they were talking about the recap, they're like, no, it is two twins.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that checks out. Because like, they look very similar.
They do.
We'll get to that a little bit later. I love the meeting when we go back to Rhaenyra and Dragonstone, and she's like, "This fucking sucks. Like,
right.
Who would do this thing?" And then immediately she looks at David, and he's like, "Ooh." It's like, who else?
Yeah.
Who else?
Well, that's a thing at that table. Other than Rhaenys and Corlys, I'm looking around Rhaenyra's council. And I know the one guy in like the black outfit was like Lord Iron something. I don't remember his name. There's the Maester.
Oh, in the small council for Aegon.
For Rhaenyra's council.
Oh, because I thought Ironrod was the guy from Aegon's.
And he might have. Oh, but then I think this even solidifies my point. We do not have like an established group of players that are Rhaenyra's advisors yet.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, I don't think there's been an attempt made to make her council.
Yes.
Because like she still feels very secluded. Like she doesn't feel like she has a tight knit group.
It does seem that it's Rhaenyra and Daemon, and then Corlys and Rhaenys.
Mm-hmm.
But then she doesn't have that like net around her that the Greens have.
And I feel like the events of this episode are kind of gonna like
push that
even more because now she's gonna be like
she needs somebody.
She needs somebody, and she's gonna be paranoid.
Yeah.
I don't know if with I always forget her name, the White Worm, Miss Arya.
Oh yeah.
I don't know with her because like she has an interesting scene where after they get into this fight with Daemon fucks off, and she's like, she comes to tears. She's like, "Where's Daemon?"
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, gone. How long? Could be a day, could be a week, could be
longer,
months. Who knows? Forever.
And they kind of bond over the fact that like, yeah, Daemon
kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Which I would love to see more of that relationship between the two.
I think something has to happen with. I don't think we never saw the White Worm leave. Correct.
No, so like we saw as Sir Eric is coming in.
She's about to
leave, and she's like, "Wait a minute! I just saw this dude
back
at the door."
But we never see her. Like we have to infer that she would have tipped somebody off.
She turns around and she walks back.
Yeah.
So like that is, I think.
That's the indication that she's going to go tip somebody off.
She's like, something's wrong, and it could be her saying, "This could be my chance to maybe earn praise."
Yep.
Or just this is like the moral thing to do, which with this character,
who knows,
right? Yeah. But I think the dynamic of her having her own like Master of Whispers would be good for Rhaenyra.
I would like to see Rhaenyra and the White Worm on the same side,
scheming together.
Yeah,
doing herd rat shit.
I think they have enough trauma and experience between them where they could have a legitimate bond. And I do think, I mean, you just made the point like, her motivation could be right, that this is the right thing to do. Like, yes, on the one hand, like for a Game of Thrones story, like the right thing to do seems like very optimistic thinking for any character.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying this is for sure her motivation. But if I had to, like, peg a character as like would do something because it's the right thing, I think the White Worm would be on on my short list of possiblies.
That's interesting.
It's not a long list. It's not a long list.
I don't know that I would peg her as that necessarily.
And
she's very opportunistic, I think.
And maybe that's not her only motivation, but maybe it is a combination of like, it is the right thing and it could be a good opportunity for me. Because they're sending her, I forget if they're sending her to Pentos with like some substantial coin.
She was paying for her travel. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Because she did say like I wouldn't dream of sending like someone without a means to go. And I don't know if that means like with the means to like go and survive.
Yeah.
Or because like I mean if you send someone without money, you're basically sending them to like whore around again.
Correct.
And I don't think that's what she wants.
No. So I mean she's from Essos, right? So like there's many things about leaving that would be easier for her.
For sure.
Right.
But I would like to see her stick around.
I would as well.
Because
I would be disappointed if she didn't.
Yeah. And I think it also leaves to her, because like Rhaenyra asked her like, hey, what's with the scars, right? Because she's got like scars around her neck from probably like being a slave.
Right, probably.
Right?
Yeah.
But she's never answered. She just like leaves.
Yeah.
So that kind of like the fact that she didn't answer that question or like shut it down to me leads to like a possibility of them talking, and then like
her father was a drinker and a fiend.
Something.
And one night he
well,
took
like
out the knife and he said, "Let's put a smile on that face."
But like bonding over like, hey, this is what my backstory is, and Rhaenyra being like, all right, let's do something about that, right?
And Rhaenyra has been cast as so far our most good character. Like if you were to if you were to also pick somebody as like who's doing something because it's the right thing to do, right? Not purely Rhaenyra, but I also feel like Rhaenyra is on that. She's on that short list.
Yeah, I misspoke earlier. It's Sir Auric who goes to kill Rhaenyra.
I love how confusing that is.
I fucking love that this show already has characters with names like Aegon, Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, Alicent, Daemon spelled weird, Jaehaerys, and they're like Eric and Eric, but we're gonna spell them super stupid.
There are characters that I think that are in the book for sure. I don't know when we're gonna meet them. There is a lord that's named Lord Grover, and his family are straight up named Kermit and Elmo.
I love it.
That's excellent.
I love it. Are you fucking serious?
I'm dead serious.
I cannot. I can't. I mean, listen, if you're writing and you're coming up with names, there comes a time where you're like, this is Tom and Joe.
Right. This is Frog and Toad.
This is Hall and Oat. Yeah. This is Blood and Cheese. Yeah, I mean, I get it. So when Sir Auric runs in, and like that scene is very tense though, because there comes a time where like you for the most part know who is who, when because the camera goes back and forth between the two of them,
because one of them at first is lurking and then one of them is not, right?
Yeah but it also like he's wearing his helmet,
yes,
and I'm thinking he assumes that his brother is also wearing the helmet, so that makes it easier for him to hide that way. But then he does see his brother,
and easier for people to miss like a freckle that's on the forehead.
Absolutely. But when he sees that his brother's not wearing his helmet, he takes this off because he's like, oh shit, like
that's
that continuity. The continuity is off.
This is a no hats in the house.
But that whole scene is very tense, and like, how is he going to actually make it to the room, or is he going to get stopped? Right, and like obviously, we know he makes it to the room. Yeah, right. Like if you've read anything, you know, like this conflict happens. Right. How it happens, again, it's up to interpretation. We see here that like I hear people saying they're confused as to like who actually wins in the end. Yeah. And I think it's very clear to me that it's Eric.
Team Black Eric.
Because I agree. The scene before, Arik is holding him down, or
Yeah.
one of the twins is holding the other one down, and he says like, "You abandoned us, you betrayed us."
Right.
So that to me tells me that like that's the Hightower, the Greens, right? Because they're the ones who feel betrayed.
Yeah, because one Eric, Team Black Eric,
Yes.
would have left.
Mm-hmm.
So then he would have abandoned.
He would have been the abandoned. He would have been the
Yeah.
one who betrayed, right?
Yeah.
So like that, and then he's the one that gets killed, the one
Right.
who says that. So that to me tells me, okay, so it's Eric
Yes.
who survives, and then because he's so upset that he killed his brother,
Then he commits.
that
Words with friends.
he commits words with- he
The
commits seppuku.
yes,
So much seppuku in this past year. Holy shit!
to seppuku, seppuku to the left,
Seppuku to the right, one to the left,
The
crisscross.
I would say I agree with you that it's Team Black Eric who wins the fight, quote unquote. Even though obviously they both lose the fight. I would say like if someone wrote me an essay that it was the other one who won based on the evidence that was shown, I would still disagree with them, but I wouldn't say like, oh, this theory is totally like out of left field. Right?
Got no merit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say, had the plot gone the other way, and if Team Green Eric still like referred to Rhaenyra as like Your Grace,
Mm-hmm.
I would have still been fine with that, because I think by the end of like Team Green Eric's tenure and just like that last interaction with Kristen Cole, I feel like he was of the mind of like, this is all some
This
is all some
bullshit. This
Yeah.
sucks. And I mean, yeah. I think outside of Jaehaerys, no, Lucerys, right? Instead of Luke and Jaehaerys.
So
who's the baby.
Jaehaerys is the older son who's alive. Lucerys is the younger son who got
Who
shot.
did?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
then
Jaehaerys
is the dead
with
baby.
the dead kid.
Yeah.
Like outside of those two, I feel like these are our two next biggest like casualties, right?
Yeah.
Like big name casualties.
Yeah.
And I think that like this is just going to be like an escalation
It is.
of just like shit. Because like I was looking at like timeline wise, spoiler alert, I guess, for someone who's not watched the show, like the events of everything going on, like the entire war is going to be like in the span of a year,
Which is crazy.
which is nuts.
Yeah.
Right? Because like even Game of Thrones,
A little longer than that.
like the whole conflict was
I take that back.
years though, right?
Here's the thing with Game of Thrones. Travel time in the earlier seasons is kind of like glossed over. Like going from the north to King's Landing when Ned becomes Hand of the King, supposed to take like 5 months or something like that.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And obviously that happens in an episode, right?
Yeah, I
So
guess it's true.
the way Game of Thrones does time is iffy, and it's also compounded by the fact that it is a TV show. So like even if it does take place within 1 year, having to revisit it 1 or sometimes even 2 years later, just makes that feeling of time feel off. I will say, yes, they're our biggest casualties so far. I think it also fits in with that idea we talked about last week, how you're seeing how things are falling out of control of, like, the oopsies are compounding, they're coming out of control of the main players. And it was explicitly said in this episode, which we haven't even talked about, Voldemort looking Aemond at the brothel, but
Yeah.
like the sex worker that he's like cuddling with was like, yeah, I find she says something to the extent of like, just remember like princes want blah blah blah, and
The ones who suffer are like
the
small
folk.
folk,
Right.
right? Like you guys have your petty squabbles, but
Yeah.
who's the ones actually fighting the war?
Exactly. And
It's-
granted, like all these characters that we've listed are either knights or nobility, but you're seeing
It
the
trickled down.
fallout trickle out.
And we also see that with I think his name is Hugh. He's the sheep. He's the guy with the sheep who went to see.
I thought he was a blacksmith. I think he's the one. Isn't he the one who's making the iron for the scorpions? The one with the long
One of
hair,
the two.
right?
One of the two, right?
Yeah.
But like, he like his wife is telling him like shit is wild out there. Like people like who have any sort of means, they just hold on to those
Right.
to like their goods, right?
Yeah.
And like people who
Like,
are
I had to
selling,
walk 3 hours to find a chicken.
and I had to pay 3 times, right?
Yeah.
So like they are the ones who are like on the ground.
Yeah, in this economy.
In this economy, right? So like we get it.
Yeah.
Like if you tell me, hey, I went to the store and I bought something for 3 times as much, I was like, yeah, so we're eggs, right?
Yeah.
So like I understand that a little bit. So like it is doing a really good job at showing, whereas I feel like in Game of Thrones, like it all for the most part stuck to like the main players.
You don't see too much of the small folk, right?
I think in this one we are seeing a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and I even felt that scene with Hugh and his wife was like uncharacteristically long. Like long enough where you're like this feeling like it's not just gonna be like a one-off.
It felt long enough that we saw this motherfucker put salt in his soup.
Yeah. Gotta season the soup.
Season your food, white people. Jesus Christ. But I think that just shows like he's like, yeah, like we're gonna be getting a little bit more of these like stories too thrown in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I'm more or less excited about
This show.
not this show necessarily, but the new spin-off coming out next year.
Oh, the Duncan Knight one?
Yeah, the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, because I feel like that's going to be a more
on the ground,
more on the ground personal story, where I feel like in like both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, well, very good shows, they are so like large scale.
Yeah.
That like it's easy to like lose track of like the minor characters sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying they're not important. Sometimes the side characters have like really huge things.
Right.
But like having focus on like these like commoners, having this focus on like this one knight who's trying to like climb the ranks and shit.
It's interesting. So when the original Star Wars Battlefronts came out, like that was one of the first, if not the first, Star Wars video game where you're like, I am playing as a nameless foot soldier, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can take media that's built around like quote unquote nobility. It can take them a long time to pivot the perspective into just like the nameless average Joe. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it will feel refreshing. I feel like to get more of that.
It's kind of like that new Star Wars game. So talking about Star Wars, the new Star Wars game that's coming out.
The scoundrel one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're not playing as like a Jedi with the fun powers. Like you are just like
a lady with a gun.
With a pew pew.
Yep.
Right? And I think that's kind of cool.
I do think that's cool.
Like there's something very interesting about that.
But that's a question. That's a question or concern that's surrounded art basically since the ancient Greeks. Is like, why do we feel compelled, especially if this is going to be relatable, like why do we feel compelled to like make all our stories about kings and princes and queens and stuff. So it takes a while for some reason for the storyteller to then move the area of focus to your average person.
Yeah, but I think that's also like, if you can then make that work, then it shows that your world is like
fleshed out,
and that's
awesome.
It's for the better. And I think, despite his flaws and not getting shit done in an appropriate amount of time, like the world that he has created, George R.R. Martin.
It's hard to write a book. Like, I think I mentioned it on this show before, but a few summers ago when I first got the Libby app, I was like, I want something new. Let me go what's on like the library's best recommended list. And they're like, this was on our list of the best books of this year. I'm like, okay, let me go out of my genre. Let's try a mystery thriller. I don't remember what it was called. It had something to do with makeup. I'm telling you, Javi, it was bad. And like the book I'm reading now that I checked out from the library, that's also like a mystery thriller that takes place.
The one you checked out last week?
Yeah.
What was it called?
The Fury. It's called Fury. And it's also just like not good. But from my perspective, right? Mm-hmm. But like people, like it's hard to write a compelling story, and on top of that, mass market it. Like so, I mean, I've got plenty of stuff to shit on George R. R. Martin about, but I ain't doing what he's doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And then there's the expectations.
Yeah.
Like, that
just make the job even harder.
Absolutely. Like, now that we know how the show, quote unquote, ends, because I guess he said that's what was going to happen.
Right.
Like, and you hear the reception that it got.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you pivot?
Yeah.
And then you make the show non-canon?
Well, he's even talked about how he has a very famous talk where he's like, bad writing is when you cater to your fans too much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, with this online world, it's much easier to theorize. So if you're leaving all these clues that like the butler did it, and the fans guessed that the butler did it, but then you want to fool the fans and at the last second make it so the butler didn't do it, he's like, that's not good. That's not good storytelling.
Yeah.
But then it's a catch-22 because like you've been found out, but that's where the story was leading.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I don't envy his work, but I'm at least glad that, like, unlike Harry Potter, I feel like we're able to actually, like, explore the world a little bit more.
Yeah,
here.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is like, it's funny because Harry Potter has so much, we've talked about this, it has so much potential.
For sure. And
there's so much you can do with that magic.
I think Hogwarts Legacy was a good starting point where, like, you don't really, like your story happening in Hogwarts Legacy really has nothing to do
with the main Harry
Potter, and I think that's great. I think if we could then pivot outside of Hogwarts
that'd be great.
And explore,
and then outside of England,
out of you know, like the other schools. I mean, there's a whole like thing about there's like a school in Nigeria, I think.
Yeah, there's schools in a lot of countries, right?
I'm like, show me that. Show me the weird French school.
That would be Beauxbaton, right? That'd be fucking cool, right?
Yeah.
So it's amazing that Harry Potter can't do that, and yet if you look at Game of Thrones land, it really just is. By and large, yes, there's other magic, but at the end of the day, it mostly is regular medieval times, but with dragons.
But that shit's interesting.
It is very interesting, but it's amazing how it's able to branch out so much when, it's the more normal one, even though it's not that normal.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. That's a good place to end. I think we covered all the important things. Is there anything that you're looking forward to going forward?
They, at the end of the episode, name dropped the other Targaryen kid.
Yeah,
who we have never seen.
Which is kind of funny because I thought they were just like, no, that's it.
Yep.
Just the two.
Just the two.
That's it.
She's like, no, your brother Daeron.
And I was like, oh.
I'm like, all right. I'm glad they did it now.
Yeah, because, I mean, didn't they also do the same thing with Helena, right? They're supposed to have 3 kids.
Yeah.
Right? 2 boys and a girl. And then for the show, they're just like, it's a boy and a girl.
Right.
Right?
Which I think that's going to be more inconsequential. But, like, I guess from what I gather, Daeron was an actual, an actual character. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think it's kind of interesting that, like, and maybe I have to go back and look, but I don't think there's ever been, like, a mention in the show about him just even existing.
No.
Which is, I mean, I know we got a big time jump, but damn.
It gives me optimism because I think Game of Thrones got to the point where there were so many characters that they were fine
axing
or like
combining.
I think this adaptation is going to be more fine with like, well, even though we should have introduced him last year, this character really needs to be here for this to make sense. So we're going to put him in. So I applaud this.
Yeah, I'm also kind of interested as to like how they're going to like go forward with Alicent's character, because like for a while, like you could go into this like being like, yeah, she's also another victim of like the monarchy, right, and the patriarchy and just using women as props, but more and more she's just also proving to be very unlikable.
I actually really like Alicent, but we can leave that for another.
For sure.
We can leave that for another episode.
But it's just the way that, like, she just keeps falling into these. And I know it's like a trauma thing, right? Like, you fall to, like, maybe what might not be best, but it's what you really want, right? Because you've been deprived. When you finally get some good D, I get it, I guess.
It's the question of if my student sucks because I'm a bad teacher, to what extent can I blame that on my own teachers? So, like, yes, this kid is failing because of me, but I was only failed by my predecessors before me. So then with Allison,
Fair.
you could say, like, yes, Allison's a bad mother.
How do
To
you
what extent
take
is it?
how do you take that conversation that she had with Otto at the end where she's like not at the end, but during the episode, where she's like, "Oh, we're being punished," and like she's trying to like tell him like I've done some bad shit,
Yeah.
and he's just like, I don't need to hear it, or I don't want to hear it.
That's honestly what kind of makes me like Otto, because I think that
Is that his way of like being like it's okay, like you may have made mistakes, or it's like I just don't need to.
Otto's about the game.
Otto's about the game,
and I think that's what he's trying to teach Allison, and what he's been trying to teach. Because early on, I think the most sympathetic I ever got to Team Green was when it's when we still have Allison as a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's when Otto gets kicked out the first time, and then she's like, "You got to be nice to Rhaenyra," and he's like, "You don't understand, like when she becomes monarch, right? People aren't gonna be legitimizing. People aren't gonna think that's legitimate. They're gonna clamor for your kid. And even though Rhaenyra's intentions may be good now, she's just gonna see that as a threat, and she's gonna put all your kids to the sword." And part of me is like, well, it don't have to be that way.
Yeah.
But part of me is also like, well, that's kind of how
it has been.
How it has been.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by Otto is about the game. I think Otto tells hard truths that, granted, he can make more of an effort to make the world around him a better place than he actually does. But he is more about the game than he is a more serious contender than Alicent is.
Yeah. One thing that like I thought was interesting, like some people are saying that like the Greens represent like the sexism of like monarchy. And like I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it's mostly about power. They use sexism as a tool to get power.
Correct.
Whereas I don't agree that it's because of the sexism.
Correct.
Right?
Because
that's my...
Alicent is still pulling... If she's not pulling strings, she's still in a position to pull.
Her hands are on the strings,
Yeah.
I feel like, even if she's not pulling them all the time.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I like this episode quite a lot.
Yeah.
I think that we are just like, if this is like the developments happening in episodes 1 and 2, then it's just going to go.
We're in for a good. Is it a 10 episode season?
It's a 10 episode season.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. And wait, one last thing. This episode was 70 minutes long.
It was an hour and 10 minutes.
That's a beautiful thing.
A beautiful thing. And that's not even including
The post
stuff.
Yeah,
Because that was another like 20 minutes.
exactly.
Did you watch that?
I did, but I don't remember like a whole lot of it.
I like watching those things because like they give you some insights.
Just to how they decided to.
Yeah. Very good.
That's
good.
where the infamous line about, well, Danny kind of forgot about the iron. comes from.
Perfect. And on that note, we will be back later.
We will be back later.
Yeah. Time is running out for Thano.
Time is running out. Don't I feel it? But in the meantime, he has been Javier.
He has been Thano, and this has been the Cine-Scoots Movie Show. Bye.
Bye.